So I want you to go to page 32. This is the Budget Policy Statement 2015. What is the Budget Policy Statement? Yes, Kerosi.
It is a document which sets the ceilings for the coming financial year, just like the County Fiscal Strategy paper.
It is the County Fiscal Strategy paper at the national level. When is it produced?
February 28th.
Not exactly. The February 28th is the date for the Fiscal Strategy paper, but the date for the Budget Policy Statement is 2 weeks before that. Counties are supposed to refer to the Budget Policy Statement in their Fiscal Strategy paper. So we are in February and we are looking back to the first half of the 14-15 financial year, right? So it is giving us information on how did we perform, okay? So this is the first P for performance, is the information contained in this table. We have information on revenue, right? We have information on expenditure. If you go down, you will see that we also have information on the deficit. So we have understood that this table, that this July to December 2014, means that this table is telling us the performance of the budget during the period July to December 2014, which is the first half of the financial year that we were in at the time the document is produced. Remember, the document is being produced in February of 2015, so that is just past the midpoint of the 2014-15 financial year. So we have information at that point on the first half of the financial year, from July to December. Remember, we said that one of the things that we have to do when we are trying to judge performance is we have to compare it to different things, right? So one of the things that we compare performance to is target. Another way of thinking about performance is to compare to past performance. How are we doing this year compared to last year? And it always has to be for a similar period. Why? Because this first half of the year and this first half of the year have similar characteristics in terms of the revenues collected. So this is saying, let's look at how we did in the first half of this year and compare it to the first half of the previous year. What about the other columns? Prog means programmed and prel means preliminary. Okay? So we have program. Program is what we program to do, meaning what was our target. Preliminary, we have returns that come in and we are estimating what we think we collected. But more information will become available over time so that we will eventually have a final estimate. So these are the preliminary estimates, okay? So they may change a little bit as we get more information. The next column says deviation. So that is just the difference between these two, between the target and the actual. Why is it in parentheses? It means that we underperformed. And the final one, what is that? It is comparing the preliminary results with the actual. So essentially it is comparing the actuals between the 2 years and asking how much did we grow. So this table is at least a standard for the kind of table you expect to see in your counties. It should have information that allows you to compare the most recent period to that same period from the previous year, but also to compare what you expected to do, target, against actual for that period. Those two kinds of comparisons, okay? That is the first P. So let's look at projections, okay? So here, when you look at these numbers, you will also be asking yourself, based on our previous discussion, are these realistic, these projections? And in order to answer that question, you want to compare what is being projected here to what is been coming in the past. Okay? And similarly on the spending side. So that is part of how we would assess this, right? You cannot just look at the number and say, I don't know, looks too big, looks too small, right? We need to look at where we are coming from. So we could do that, we can assess that based on past experience. So this is setting the overall revenue, expenditure, and deficit. Then we move into the sectors. Now I want you to look at, I need you to open a different document. Okay, so here is the third P, priorities. The question we are asking is, why should we give more to education versus agriculture versus health? We are comparing change over time, If I am allocating more to a particular area this year than last year, then that might be a priority. Similarly, we are comparing across sectors. If I have decided to move from 10% for education to 15% for education, then that means that I am increasing the priority attached to that, whereas health has fallen from 20 to 15. So if you turn to page 52, you will see the ceilings table by sector. This is the ceiling that is being proposed for 1617, okay? BPS ceiling 1617. But what interests me is over here, the percentages. This is the share of the budget going to that sector. So here we are talking about agriculture, rural and urban development. In the 15-16 budget, the share of the sector budget going to agriculture was 5.3%. What is it in the new ceilings? 4.3%. It has declined by 1 percentage point. Was agriculture one of the priorities? Yes, it was. Paragraph 186, agriculture was listed as one of the priorities. Other priority areas, including security, social protection, youth, and agriculture. Okay. So the share of the budget going to agriculture is going down, but it was listed as a priority. Let's look at social protection. Social protection sector also going down. Is that a priority? Social protection, by the way, was mentioned twice. Once here and once here. So it was like a super priority. If we go back to the table and we now look at health, 3.9 up to 4.0. Okay, so maybe that's a priority. Not a big increase, but at least it's increasing. The more resources that we are putting in a particular sector of those new resources, the higher priority it is. And that is reflected in the changing share of the budget. Okay? So this tells you, this 1 percentage point drop in agriculture tells you that we received new resources in the budget, but we didn't put them in agriculture. We put them somewhere else. And the reason we must have done that is because there was something else that was more important to us than agriculture. Those changing shares of the budget reflect how we are using the additional money that we have across the different sectors. That's how I think about priorities.